That knot in your throat that appears right after you accept a commitment you didn't want. Or when someone invades your space, and you just smile and pretend everything is fine. This feeling is not by chance. It is your body screaming that your boundary has been trampled over once again. Many people believe that being a good, empathetic and helpful person means being available all the time. But the reality is much harsher than that. When you don't know where your own will ends, and where the demands of others begin, you stop being the protagonist of your life, and become support staff for the wishes of those around you. This difficulty in saying, "You can only go this far," usually stems from a deep fear. The fear of being seen as selfish, rude, or even the worry of facing some kind of rejection. We grow up hearing that helping is a virtue, and it truly is. The problem happens when this help becomes an involuntary sacrifice of your peace of mind. You end up becoming that person everyone knows they can count on, but nobody realizes how exhausted you are inside. And the worst part, this exhaustion slowly transforms into resentment. You start feeling angry at the people who ask for things, when in fact, the root of the conflict lies in your difficulty protecting your own emotional territory. Establishing boundaries has nothing to do with building concrete walls to isolate yourself from the world, or treating people with coldness. In fact, it is the opposite. Boundaries are like the walls of a house. They serve so the structure doesn't collapse, and so that those who live inside feel secure. Without them, anyone can enter, mess up the furniture, and take away your peace. Learning to say no firmly and kindly is a skill that saves years of suffering and prevents the burnout that many accept as normal. It is crucial to understand that by respecting your time and energy, you are teaching others how they should treat you. If you don't put up a signpost, people will continue walking all over your lawn without even realizing they are hurting you. This leads to a necessary reflection. Why is it so hard to prioritize our own minds before trying to save someone else's day? The answer lies in how we were taught to seek approval all the time. But the truth is that the respect you receive from the world is a direct reflection of the respect you demonstrate for yourself. If you constantly put yourself last, you cannot expect others to put you first. It is possible to change this dynamic without having to become an aggressive person. Respecting yourself is the first step toward having healthier and, above all, truer relationships. Many people confuse boundaries with rudeness because they grew up in environments where no was seen as an affront or a lack of affection. The truth is that putting a protective barrier around your time and energy is the kindest act you can practice for yourself, and surprisingly, for your relationships. Think of a boundary as the map of private property. If you don't put up the signs, how will people know where the garden ends and your house begins? Without these clear markers, others will step on your grass, enter without knocking, and eventually, you will start feeling angry at people who didn't even know they were invading your space. This accumulated anger is what truly spoils long-term relationships. When you agree to do that extra favor at work, even though you are exhausted, or when you agree to go to a social event that drains your strength, you are planting a seed of bitterness. Sooner or later, this seed sprouts in the form of sharp replies, irony, or that emotional exhaustion that makes you want to disappear. The problem was never the other person's request, but your difficulty communicating that your energy quota was already depleted. The lack of boundaries turns generous people into resentful people. This is where the fundamental difference between being firm and being aggressive comes in. Being aggressive is attacking the other person to protect yourself, using the attack as a defense. Being firm is merely declaring your internal reality. Saying, "I would love to help you, but right now I need to prioritize my rest," is not an insult to the other person. It is an affirmation of your own biological and mental need. Do you notice the subtlety? You are not slamming the door in anyone's face out of malice. You are just announcing that the door is locked from the inside for necessary maintenance. The fact is, when you start establishing these boundaries, some people might react badly. This is natural. Those who were used to your unrestrained yes might feel uncomfortable with the new configuration. But that external discomfort is not your responsibility. If someone distances themselves from you because you started respecting yourself, that person didn't love you. They loved how easy it was to have you around without restrictions. If you still feel guilty when thinking about setting boundaries, remember that classic safety instruction. Put on your own oxygen mask first. If you pass out from a lack of emotional air, you cannot serve as support for anyone else. Respecting your own limit ensures that when you say yes, that yes is whole, genuine, and free of hidden demands. This completely changes the quality of your presence in people's lives, making your bonds much more real and less based on silent obligations. Respect begins the moment you stop apologizing for existing and having your own needs. This need to always be available creates a kind of emotional debt that is never settled. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you are taking out an energy loan that you cannot afford to pay back. The interest on this is anxiety. It's that middle-of-the-night insomnia reliving dialogues where you felt diminished or overwhelmed. The truth is that no one will guess where your space ends and someone else's begins if you don't signal it. The people around you are not psychics. They will advance as far as you allow, and often they do so without any malice, simply due to a lack of clear markers for what hurts you or what exhausts you. When you start saying you can only come this far, something curious happens. Initially, an internal discomfort arises, a kind of twitch in your conscience that we call guilt. But this guilt is not a sign that you are being a bad or selfish person. It's just the symptom that you are breaking an old vicious pattern. It is your system adjusting to a new way of existing, where you no longer accept the role of a supporting character in your own life. Understand that a boundary does not function as a concrete wall that isolates you from the world, but rather as a door with a lock. You now hold the key and choose who enters when they enter, and under what conditions that visit takes place. Imagine the following situation. A co-worker or family member asks you for something complex at the exact moment you are exhausted. The automatic response, dictated by the fear of seeming uncooperative, would be to accept and sacrifice the little that remains of your energy. But what if you tried a different approach? Something like, I understand this is important to you, but right now, I need to prioritize my rest so I can focus later. Can we talk about this tomorrow? Note that there was no attack, no rudeness, and no excessive justifications. There was merely the exposure of a fact. You have a limit on time and energy. Those who truly respect you will absorb this naturally. Those who only want to extract something from you will complain. And that complaint is the biggest receipt proving that your boundary was more than necessary. This clarity removes the weight of assumptions. When you don't establish boundaries, you end up expecting the other person to have what we call common sense. But common sense is subjective and varies from person to person. What is obvious to you might be completely invisible to your boss or partner. By talking openly about what you accept and what you won't tolerate, you eliminate the guessing game that so depletes relationships. You stop being a victim of circumstance and the will of others, and become the manager of your own routine. This has a direct impact on your physical health. That constant tension in your shoulders, the headaches that pop up out of nowhere, and the exhaustion that no 8 hours of sleep can solve, are often linked to this overload of saying yes to the world while you negate yourself. Your body screams what your mouth doesn't have the courage to say. Learning to set boundaries is a strategy for biological survival. It is giving your nervous system the assurance that it will not be invaded or exploited at any moment. This creates a state of internal security that allows you to be much more productive, creative, and ironically, much more loving when you willingly decide to dedicate yourself to someone. Imagine that your mental and emotional energy functions exactly like private land. If you don't put up a clear fence, people don't know where their space ends and yours begins. They enter, step on the grass, leave trash, and walk away without looking back, often without even realizing they caused damage. When you finally decide to put up a gate, Those who were used to using your land as a free shortcut will complain. They will say you've changed, that you're being difficult, cold, or even selfish. But understand a liberating truth. The people who benefited most from your silence and lack of boundaries are exactly the ones who will fight hardest against your new voice. Establishing these barriers is not about pushing people away or creating punitive isolation, but about defining the rules of coexistence so that you don't end up feeling deep resentment toward those you love. Resentment is the poison that leaks out when we accept something that violates our values or depletes our reserves. You know that burning in your stomach, or that tension in your shoulders that arises when the phone rings and you answer already angry before the person even speaks. That is your nervous system pleading for help, signaling that a boundary was ignored too long ago. To change this pattern, you need to unlearn the idea that being too nice is the same as being a good person. A good person is, above all, a person of integrity, and integrity demands radical honesty. If you say yes to a favor when your whole being wants to say no, you are being dishonest with the other person, and especially disloyal to yourself. You are giving away a piece of your peace in exchange for approval that is, deep down, fragile and dependent on your submission. The practice of setting boundaries begins in small, almost trivial situations that serve as training for the major battles of life. It's saying that you cannot take that call right now because you chose a moment of rest, or calmly explaining that you won't lend that object you value greatly and don't want to see damaged. When you use phrases centered on your perception, like "I feel that I need more time to focus on my priorities right now," instead of pointing the finger and saying, "You always interrupt me with silly things," the other person's resistance tends to decrease. You are not attacking their behavior. You are simply describing your internal reality and your biological needs for space. This removes the burden of fighting and puts the focus on preserving your mental health. Often the fear of being rude comes from a mental confusion between aggressiveness and assertiveness. Aggressiveness is an invasion, an attack on the other person to get what you want. Assertiveness, however, is a form of protection. It is the act of guarding what is yours without having to hurt anyone. It is perfectly possible to be sweet in your tone of voice and absolutely firm in your decision. You can smile, look them in the eye and say, "I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm glad you thought of me. But today, I've chosen to stay home to recharge my batteries." Notice that there is no flimsy excuse, no lie to evade or endless justification. You validated your choice and gave the other person the chance to respect your autonomy. This brings us to an uncomfortable but necessary point. If someone distances themselves from you, or becomes genuinely furious because you now have boundaries, that person was never truly there for you. They were there for what you could offer, at the cost of your own well-being. Keeping these figures close means paying too high a price for company that only exists under conditions of emotional exploitation. Self-respect works as a natural filter. It drives away those who only seek utility, and attracts people who also respect themselves and understand the value of an honest no. It is in this new circle of relationships, where everyone's space is sacred, that real peace finally finds ground to flourish. That feeling of a dry throat and a racing heart when you utter a no is your body learning to defend itself from an invasion that lasted too long. Many people confuse this physical discomfort with the idea of being a bad or selfish person. But that emerging guilt is not a reliable moral compass. It is merely the echo of years of conditioning that taught you to be everyone's support, while you yourself collapsed in silence. You were trained to believe that pillars don't need maintenance. But the truth is that without clear boundaries, you stop being a support and become territory without an owner, where anyone can tread and extract whatever they please. Imagine your life is a house. Establishing boundaries is not building a concrete wall with barbed wire to isolate the world, but rather putting up a low fence and a gate with a lock. Having a gate doesn't mean you hate your neighbors or wish to live in solitude. It just means you choose who enters and under what conditions those people can remain in your garden. When you leave the doors wide open for fear of seeming rude, you end up allowing strangers to come in with muddy feet and mess up the room you took so long to organize. Clarity about what you accept and what you reject is ultimately the highest form of honesty and charity you can offer someone. Being vague, saying maybe when your chest screams never, or accepting a commitment through gritted teeth only generates a silent poison called resentment. This feeling corrodes the relationship from the inside because the other person believes everything is fine, while you accumulate bitterness for not having been able to protect your own energy. When you are honest about your boundaries, you give the other person the opportunity to know who you really are, and not that edited, exhausted, and fictitious version you try to maintain to please the audience. This brings a lightness that the forced yes could never buy on any shelf in life. Your time and your mental health are the most finite assets you possess. If you hand them out to anyone who asks, purely out of fear of a sour face or a sharp comment, you are declaring to yourself that your peace is worthless. Respecting yourself first means understanding that your emotional battery has a limit, and that recharging is not a luxury. It is a necessity for survival. Those who genuinely care for you will understand when you say you cannot today, that it doesn't work right now, or that a particular topic exceeds what you can carry at the moment. Anyone who distances themselves or gets irritated when faced with a healthy boundary was never at your side for you, but rather for the ease of using you as an inexhaustible resource. Now, I want you to do an honesty exercise with me. Look at your routine today and identify that specific point where you feel you are being invaded. What is the boundary that you know you need to set right now, but are still holding back for fear of other people's reactions? Write a short, direct, and polite sentence below in the comments that you would use to protect your space starting tomorrow. By sharing your sentence, you help other people who are in the same process understand that protecting your own mind is not an act of war, but an act of self-love. If this perspective on your mental health brought some relief to your chest, consider subscribing so we can continue this dialogue. Your journey to a calmer life begins exactly the second you decide that your well-being is non-negotiable.